Hi, this is Ali Arango from Little Guy CGI, and today I would like to show you how to make a female body in Blender 2.8. So let's get started. Okay, just to be clear, this is the Blender 2.8 beta. Okay, the first thing we want to do is let's go to front view. So I'm clicking on this little gizmo right here. I'm just clicking on the green Y right here. If I click that, it goes between front and back. I want to be in front orthographic view. So with this cube selected, you can tell it's selected because it's highlighted orange. I'm going to press X, and then I'm going to select delete to get rid of the cube. The first thing we want to do is bring in a reference image. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to hold Shift, press A. This brings up our Add To menu. We're then going to go to Empty. We're then going to go to Image. So I'm going to left click on Image. Okay, and right here we can see our empty. What we're going to do is we're going to press R to rotate on the X-axis, 90, and then press Enter to lock that in. So we see just the empty right here. There's no image yet. The reason for that is we need to go over here. See this, I don't know how you would describe it. It almost looks like a axis setup. This is the empty setup. So when we click on this, you can see we have this menu that says open. So what we're going to do is click open. I'm going to go to desktop. And then I have the image right here. So you can see the image right here, see the words for the image. To actually see the image, we can go to right here. Looks like 4 squares. We're going to left click there. Now we can see our image here. What I'm going to do now is left click on this image. And then I'm going to click open image. And with the image open, now the empty has the image in it. Okay, we have our empty image here. Now what we want to do is determine the size of this. We can scale this image up. And what we want to do is I'm going to hold Shift, I'm going to press A. This brings up our Add To menu. And then I'm going to go to Mesh, where we're on Mesh. I'm going to go to Mesh and then UV Sphere. So there's the UV sphere here. And this is basically going to be the basis for the head of the female body that we're going to make. So we're going to scale up our image so that it matches this UV sphere. So right here is our collection. Our collection holds our different objects. If we click on this little triangle, we can see the different objects in here. What we're going to do is click on our empty. And our empty is selected here. We can see it's selected because this is highlighted, even though we can't see our empty highlighted here. Well, check that out. When you hover over your selected object, it highlights. Blender 2.8 is so nice. Anyway, we can see the empty is selected here. I'm going to press S to scale this up. I'm going to press S to scale this up more. Okay, the way that you work with reference images in Blenders is different than it was before. It's actually not that much different. When you look here, and what we're clicked on right now is this button. So this is actually where the empty was at. When we clicked image, now this is still the empty button, but it's showing an image now. So we have all these different settings right here. So we want to take this head and line it up so we can see it, and line this head right here up with this UV sphere. So when we look where we see this depth, see this says default, but we also have these options front as well as back. We're going to left click on front. So when we did that, it looks like our UV sphere disappeared. It's still there. And to see it, what we need to do is look to our transparency right here. We're going to left click and drag this to the side. Now we can see our empty image here as well as our UV sphere. So with that done, we're going to left click on our empty image. We're then going to click on our move tool, and we're going to pull the image over. We're going to push this down. Then we're going to press S to scale and then pull our mouse to the side. S to scale. I'm going to zoom back. And what I'm doing now is I'm just pushing the reference image. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm going to press S to scale this down. And see the top part of the head right there. I'm just lining the reference image up just by moving it You want to have this blue line going right through the center of your reference image character. Looks good right there. Okay, from what we did here, we'll still have to scale objects. It just seemed to make sense to scale this up to more closely match the general size that image come into Blender at. Okay, so we're in our front orthographic view. You can see which view you're in by looking to your upper left. Now we need to set up an image to the right. So I'm gonna zoom back. I'm gonna left click on this image. I'm gonna hold Shift D. And I'm just moving my mouse to the side. I didn't click anything. I just wanted to make sure this image was duplicated. I'm gonna right click just to get the image to jump back into place. Now I'm gonna go to this red X. I'm gonna left click here and I'm looking here. I can see we're in the right orthographic view here, which is where we want to be. And currently we have our duplicated image selected. Okay, currently we have our duplicate empty image selected. What we want to do is press R to rotate on the Z-axis 90, then press Enter to lock that in. So because we scaled our first empty up, this is just a duplicate of that empty. So this is going to be our right image, and this will be the same size as our other image because it's a duplicate. So the thing we want to pay attention to is we want to make sure we're in the right orthographic view, which we are, and then we have our right view of our body right here, right? So we want to take this blue line, use this as a guide to line this right view of our body up. So with our empty selected, we're just going to take our move tool and we're going to put this how you see it. So just coming right down through most of the body, this blue line being what I'm talking about. So when I hold the middle mouse button to rotate, we can see both images, right? So you may like this or you may not like this. However, we're not stuck with this, which is very cool because of the Blender developers. I'm holding Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. So the way things are now, we can still see our images as we rotate, the way that the reference images in Blender used to be, at least the main way that people used to use them. There was a way to set things up like this before in Blender 2.79. Just the main way that people use background images were so that as soon as you turned out of an orthographic view, your images would disappear. Okay, if we don't want to see our images when we hold the middle mouse button, what we can do is I'm going to click on this empty right here. I'm going to take away where we see, where you look and you see display perspective, display backside. I'm going to leave where we see display orthographic. I'm going to take away these check marks. You can see our image disappeared there. I'm going to click on this empty image here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take away these two check marks. Now we can't see those images. However, when I click the green Y, now you can see that in front orthographic view, we can see our image. Then when I click the red X circle, in right orthographic, we can see our reference image. However, when I hold the middle mouse button, we can't see our image. So I'm going to click this green Y to go back to front view. So now things are set up pretty much how they were before in Blender 2.79. Okay, so we're in front orthographic view. That's where we want to be. Be aware that where your 3D cursor in Blender is at is where objects tend to come into Blender at. You tend to want to bring your objects into Blender in your center view. If you press Alt-C, your 3D cursor, when I said center view, I meant the center of your scene. You want your 3D cursor to be there and to bring objects there, particularly for when you want to mirror objects. You can press Alt-C to get your 3D cursor back to the center. You also can hold Shift as well as right click to move your 3D cursor around. What we want to do now is with our 3D cursor centered, I'm going to hold Shift, press A. This brings up our Add to menu. I'm then going to select UV sphere. A UV sphere just came in right to the 3D cursor. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel in. I'm going to take the move manipulator and push this UV sphere down to about here. Okay, so this way of making a character, by the way, what's going on is we're going to block out our character with basic shapes. Once we have the character blocked out with basic shapes, we're going to use the boolean modifier. That's the plan to blend the shapes together. And then we're going to bring these shapes into sculpt mode, and we'll add detail to the shapes then. This method is very useful for just giving you freedom. I just wanted to give you a general idea of what we're doing. So anyway, here's our UV sphere right here, right? So with these basic shapes, we're putting them where we think they should, where they can basically fill out our reference image most. So I'm going to press S to scale this up, right? I'm going to move this up here like this. What I'm basically thinking right now is I'm getting the 3D, not 3D, I'm getting the UV sphere to right here, right? So that's at the bottom of our torso. And then I am looking right here where the hips are at, right? I'm ignoring this top part right here because we're going to flatten this out. We're going to flatten this so that this comes down to about here is the plan. So we have this lined up here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to, this is when I say lined up, I mean in our front orthographic view, we're going to click on our red X circle and we can see that this is lined up here as well. One of the things we can do, when I pause there for a second, my God, did this move? I'm going to go back to the front view by clicking the green Y. I'm going to click on our empty image. And one of the things we can do is to make sure that we don't move this by accident, which is very easy to do. We can go to our empty here, and you can tell that this is the empty we're working with. So this is highlighted orange here. This is also highlighted here. See this arrow pointer here? If I left click on that, this makes it so we can't select this view, which is good because we don't want to move this, right? So I'm going to go to the red X circle. I'm going to click this empty. Oh, that's interesting. I'm clicked on here, but okay, so this is still highlighted blue here, which I guess because this is the last object. Okay, I see what's going on. So this is highlighted blue. This is also highlighted. So if you're ever concerned about which thing you're on, like I looked here, I saw this blue line. I was like, okay, am I still selected on that or what? I clicked here. So I can see that this is highlighted. So I'm going to click here. If you are in a situation where you're wondering if you have the right thing selected, you can click the eye to temporarily hide that object and then just click the eye again to bring it back. So this is the object that we want. I'm going to click this pointer here. So now we can't select this empty right here. So this will just help things out. So this is one concern that we don't have to think about now. So I'm going to click this green Y circle to go back to front view. So now we're back in front orthographic view, which is where we want to be. Okay, when I make these tutorials, I like saying my general thought process when it comes to, as far as multiple things, as far as adding geometry before we work with the booleans for UV spheres. I do not like to add subdivision surfaces to UV spheres. I will add subdivision surfaces to blocks that we, squares that we subdivide. That tends to make things work better as far as once you get ready to join the different shapes together using a boolean modifier. So I'm going to click here on this. I can right click and select shade smooth to make this smooth. What I want to do now is I want to look up to here. One of the things with Blender 2.8 is we have all of these different tabs up here. Now, when we go to these tabs, I like these tabs a lot. One thing to be aware of is these tabs are here to make things easier for you. However, when you work with these tabs up here, when you click between tabs, don't expect for your view as well as other options to be selected when you click these tabs. I am about to go to sculpting mode to try to flatten this top part out, right? I'm about to click sculpting mode. So when I click, this will probably be in a different view, right? I don't have to go to here for sculpting. I can go to object mode here, click here, and then I can select sculpt mode here. And the advantage to selecting sculpt mode here is that the view will be the same, the options will be the same. The advantage is to clicking this tab instead of clicking the sculpting mode here is when I click the sculpting tab here, the colors will change. Blender will be set up in an optimal way to sculpt. So that's the good thing. The possible negative thing could be that the view will not necessarily be the same. I just want to make that clear. You can go to here. So in other words, if you go up here and you're like, oh, when I go up here, I don't like how the view changes, then go to object mode, click here, and select sculpt mode there. For now, I'm going to click the sculpting tab here, and you can see that things have changed. We're in user perspective. We were in front orthographic. So I'm going to click the Y right here. Now you can see we're back in front orthographic view. So now we can see our reference image right here. I am with our, we selected our UV sphere. I believe we selected it. Okay, we have our UV sphere selected here. So this is layout mode. So this is the basic mode you start Blender off in. So a lot of times I'll come back to layout mode to click here. When I try to select the collections, Blender 2.8 doesn't seem to be selecting. So we'll see as we go through this tutorial. So anyway, I'm going to click back to go to sculpting mode here. Okay, so here we are in sculpting mode. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan up. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to flatten the top of this UV sphere out. So to do that, we're going to look to here. And when we hover over this button, we can see that this is flattened. So we've been using this green Y as well as this red X to manipulate our view. Now we're going to click on this blue Z. And when we did that, you can see this is our top orthographic view right here. I'm going to press the F key to make my brush basically about the size of the UV sphere here. And then what I'm going to do is see how my brush size is the size of the sphere. I'm going to left click again, as well as again, then again. Now I'm going to go to this green Y, and we can see this here. Okay, so we have a lot more. We need this to be a lot flatter. So we can use the flatten brush. We can also use the smooth brush. So let's click this blue Z again. So now I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to rub back and forth. Now, because we're in an orthographic perspective, this is probably the best way to flatten it. So I think anyway. However, we can't really see too much of what's going on from this view. We could split the view and do all that. It'll take some time. I think it's easier just to go to back and forth here and see. So we'll go back to that top view. Doesn't have to be totally flat. So I'm holding shift, by the way, and I am just flattening that top out. I'm going to go back to the green Y. See how this is pretty much matching up with the hips here? I'm going to go back to the green Z again. We're in top view. I'm going to go back. We're on flatten. I was holding shift, which when you hold shift in Blender, you automatically activate the smooth tool. So I'm not going to hold shift. I'm going to left click now, and I'm going to go back again. Okay, and that's good for now, how this is. So it's not totally flat, but it's got that general shape, and that's pretty much what we're going for. Okay, we're going to click to go back to layout view. We have our 3D cursor in the center of for our reference. Let's go to our red circle here. And we can see our UV sphere is about the height that it should be. Let's press S to scale on the Y axis. See how that preview line comes out? That green line is showing us how we can scale. So I just scaled this to thin this out as far as front to back. Now I'm going to take the manipulator and push this forward like that. I'm going to click the green Y. Okay, so one of the things with this method of how we're working, to make this female body is we can use the same parts pretty much again and again. Our 3D cursor is here, so we can in Blender objects tend to come into Blender where the 3D cursor is at. What we want to do now is we want to hold Shift. While holding Shift, press A. This brings up our Add to menu. So we're going to go to Mesh and then select Cube. So our cube went right to here, right? What we're going to do is roll our mouse wheel to zoom back. We're going to take this cube and pull this cube up. Now what we're going to do is, there's two ways we can do this. We want to put a subdivision surface on this cube. We can hold Control and press 2, which will put the subdivision surface on the cube with a subdivision of 2 on it. I'm going to show you how to go to the modifier menu. So it looks like a wrench. We're going to left click that. Once we left click that, we see where this says add modifier. We're going to click on this arrow looking thing here. We're going to left click there. Then we're going to go down to where we see subdivision surface. We're going to left click here. When we did that, we put a subdivision surface on our cube. See this view here? We're going to take this up to 2. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to hover the mouse here. I'm going to hold Shift, then press B. This makes a zoom box so we can zoom in here. So this is the cube. The reason why it doesn't look like a cube anymore is because we have a subdivision surface on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to press S to scale on the Z axis to stretch out the cube like this. Why are we stretching out the cube like this? This is because this cube is going to be a lot of our different body parts. Currently we're in object mode. In Blender, you tend to move objects around in object mode. You tend to edit those actual objects in edit mode. So with this object selected, we're going to go to where we see object mode. We're going to left click on this little triangular looking thing here. And then we're going to select edit mode. So now we're inside of edit mode. Okay, we put a subdivision surface on this cube because we wanted this to have a more organic shape to it. However, we want this to have more form. So we're going to hold Control, we're going to press R. This puts a loop cut in. I'm going to left click one time, because only left click one time I can move this loop cut. By me moving this loop cut up, I can give this cube more of a squarish shape at the top, but it still has an organic look to it. I'm going to left click on nothing. I'm going to hover over here. I'm going to hold Control, press R to put a loop cut. If you don't see the loop cut, when you press R, move your mouse. All right. I'm going to left click once because I left click once. I can move the loop cut. I'm doing pretty much the same thing on the bottom here. I'm going to left click. This doesn't have to be exact between the top and the bottom. Now I'm going to left click on nothing to deselect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click near the upper left on the edit mode, the arrow next to edit mode. I'm going to click to go back to object mode. I'm then going to zoom my mouse back. I'm then going to right click and we can see our object context menu. And then I'm going to select shade smooth. Okay, now one of the things with making this body, how we're making it, I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan up. I'm going to push this down, is we can use this over and over again as we go through this process. When I say this, I mean this shape. We can duplicate this shape and use it again, and that's what we're planning to do, and it works out fairly well. Okay, we're going to use this shape multiple times. What we're going to do now is we're going to hold Shift, press D. I'm then going to right click to get that shape to stay in place. Doesn't look like I did anything. I duplicated the shape. You just can't see it because it's in the same exact spot. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan up. Then I'm going to take the move manipulator to push this shape down to the torso area right here. Currently with this shape selected, you can tell it's selected because it's highlighted orange. I'm going to go to the upper left, click on the triangle next to object mode, then click to go into edit mode. You can select your mesh in edit mode as far as vertex, edge, or face select. Currently we're on vertex select, that's fine. I'm going to press A to select everything. We want to scale this up, but we want to make this fatter, not just bigger. So to do that, we're going to hold Alt, then press S. I'm going to hold Shift for fine control, then I'm going to move my mouse down. I'm going to left click and I let go of Shift. I was looking to see this get wide enough to go to this arm right here. Now I'm going to press S to scale in the Z axis. And I've scaled this to get this to line up basically with the bottom of the rib cage as well as where the neck starts right there. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to, I'm going to click on nothingness to deselect. I'm then going to click here. The upper left I'm clicking, I'm going to click object mode. I'm then going to click on our red X circle. And what we want to do now is we want to rotate this. Since we're in an orthographic view, we can just press R to rotate. I'm rotating this to match up with how we see the body looking here. Now I want to scale this way, right? So if I press S to scale on the Y axis, see how if I scale now, it's not right? I can press S to scale Y twice, and now you see how the preview line is showing us how we can scale. So I can scale just like how I want to scale. Be aware that to have things scale like that, when you press S and then Y twice, you need to be in object mode for this to work correctly. Okay, so with this method, we can pretty quickly block this out. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis here. I'm going to push this forward some. I'm going to click here, hold Shift, press D to duplicate, right click. I'm going to bring this down like this. And I want to have this actually go down to position it like that. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis like that. I'm going to hold Shift and middle mouse and drag down. I'm going to click here. I'm going to hold Shift, press D, right click. I'm going to bring this duplicate down. I'm going to press R. And I'm just rotating this to line it up with the neck. I'm going to press S to scale and then Z twice. I press S to scale, then Y twice. I'm going to left click here, hold Shift, press D, right click, bring this down for this part of the arm. I'm going to press S to scale. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis here. Press S to scale on the Z axis. Again, I'm going to take this arm, this object here to select. I'm going to hold Shift, press D, right click to get that to stay in place. Bring this down, press R to rotate this. And these objects, we actually want to have them overlapping some. I'm going to press S to scale Z twice, like that. I'm going to left click here again. I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to smoothly zoom back. With this selected, I'm going to hold Shift, press D. I'm going to right click, bring this down to here. I'm going to take this right from the top, right here, like the hip. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like that. S to scale on the Z axis like that. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis like this. I'm going to press R to rotate like that. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like that. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. With this selected here, I'm going to hold Shift, press D, then right click. I'm going to press R to rotate this. I'm going to press S to scale. Press S to scale on the Z axis like that. Okay, I'm going to click here, roll the mouse wheel to zoom back, hold Shift, press D, right click, bring this down. I'm going to press R to rotate, 9-0. Lining this up like this. I press S to scale on the Y axis. Just ignoring that for now. Okay, so I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Let's select here. So I'm holding Shift and I'm pulling this out to the side on this red, using this red arrow. So I'm just going to the X-axis. So I'm clicking here and now I'm holding Shift and I'm just pulling this out here like that. Now I'm going to click the green Y. So now we can see here's our objects here. So I'm going to push this here. For the arm, I'm going to press, we're in front orthographic view. I'm going to press R to rotate. Because we're in orthographic view, that's why I can just rotate without being concerned about an axis. So now I'm going to click here, hold Shift, click here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to click here. I'm going to push this in. I'm going to press R to rotate. Like that. We'll click here, press R to rotate. Like that. Click here, we'll press S to scale on the Z axis twice. Then we'll hold Shift, press D, and right click for the hand here. I'm actually trying to put this in position so that, you know, we can see the fingers here. So this is just basically the palm. Okay, with our 3D cursor here in the center, we want to bring in an empty. We're going to use that empty to mirror our objects. So with our 3D cursor in the center, if by some chance your 3D cursor isn't in the center of your scene, you should be able to press Alt-C. That will make your 3D cursor center. Where the 3D cursor is in Blender is where your objects tend to come into Blender at. So we're going to hold Shift, we're going to press A. This brings up our Add To menu. We're going to go to Empty. We're then going to go to Cube. So we have our new empty right here, and this empty is just used again for mirroring. So this is the empty right here. I'm going to click the eye and hit it and then unhit it just to make sure that that's what I was selected on. I'm going to double click here and name this E for mirror, then enter. Basically stands for empty for mirror or mirroring. So named it E for mirror. Okay, so with that done, wouldn't it be nice if we could take these white shapes and actually have a different color on them? I've seen blockouts before, and there's all these different colors. Wouldn't it be nice if Blender can do that? Well, guess what? We're welcome to Blender 2.8. So instead of us having to look at all of our objects being white, what we can do is currently we are in the Eevee render engine. We can click this little triangular looking thing. We can switch to Workbench. So while we switch to Workbench over Eevee, and Blender 2.8, Eevee deservedly gets a lot of credit, and it deserves it. However, Workbench has some very cool things as well, and one of them is here we are in Workbench. So in Workbench, we can go to where we see shading. We can click this triangle here. Then we can go down, see where we see color, single material, random texture. Look at this random. We'll just left click there and look at that. When we left clicked on random, all of our different objects now has its own color. Well, the ones that weren't duplicated, the duplicated objects have a similar color. But long story short, our colors, our objects, you can see it even better here, now have a color to help differentiate them. So that is very nice and very cool. And that is just another one of the spectacular things of Blender 2.8. So I'm going to click this Y to go back to front orthographic view. Okay, so with that done, we can start, working to get our shapes more in line with the reference image. I'm going to press S to scale on the X-axis to make this waist match up more with the reference image right there. I'm going to click here. I'm going to press S to scale on the X-axis to make this closer to the reference image as well. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, we have our subdivision surface image on these duplications of this. I should have actually applied this already. You want to stretch out your cube in the beginning, and then you want to put your loop cuts in. After you do that, you can apply your subdivision surface. You don't want to apply this modifier before you put your loop cuts in, because that'll make things more difficult for you. But after you have your two loop cuts, remember we put a loop cut, we move one up, we put another loop cut, we move it down. Once you have that, you can click apply, and we're just going to go to these different shapes that came from that and click apply. So why are we clicking apply? What does it mean to apply? Apply means that the subdivision surface is basically giving us more geometry, more definition in our geometry. And with it being a modifier, we can take that geometry up and down, or even deactivate it or get rid of it. Once we apply the geometry, it's set. The geometry is set at what it is. You don't want to apply, you don't want to, well, we don't have it on our spheres. Our neck, let's scale this on the X-axis in first. Now let's apply that. So why am I applying this now? Because when you go to, we're going to use scope mode to shape this. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan the view. I'm going to click apply. I'm going to click apply. With these, with the modifier applied, we'll be able to more easily work with our shapes. That's why you want to apply the modifier. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to click on this upper thigh. We're then going to go to the sculpting tab. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button. Now to do this right here, to be able to sculpt freely, let's go to the grab brush, right? Also, what we want to do is, and this is important here, see this symmetry lock? So I'm looking to the bottom right-hand side of this screen where we see symmetry lock. You want to click this triangle here. See where it says mirror X? This is so that you automatically will mirror, you'll automatically mirror as you work in sculpt mode. So what does that mean? That means if I pull on this side will be pulled on in the same way Blender would try to pull on this side as this side. We don't want that for here. we want to be able to, grab this area here and fill this out and, basically shape this as we want. So to do that, what we want to do is click this X to turn off the mirror on the X mode that is set up for sculpt mode. Okay, so now with that done, I'm going to press F to shrink my brush. I'm going to pull this out, and you can see, and part of this is from that when we applied the modifier, we can fairly easily push this die into place. Let's go to, let's press the red circle here. So we'll push this forward some. Don't worry about this area here. Now we have this area here, so we can pretty easily bring that back. Same thing here. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to click to go back to our layout. You can see here's our, it's basically in place right there as far as our upper thigh and how this is shaped for the most part, like our reference image there. Okay, so now we're going to click on the lower leg area. We're going to click on Sculpt. We still have our grab, so we're already on the side view, so let's push that in some there. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. We're just using the grab brush to shape this. And remember, we're just working on this lower thigh right here. So now we'll click this green Y twice. Shrink this down. I'm going to press F to grow this so I can just more easily pull this part into shape. Press F to shrink my brush. So I press F, then I move my mouse. Now we can take a look at this and we can see it looks funny. So let's hold shift and we can smooth this out. Then after we smooth it out, look at that, we lost most of it. Okay. So what we can actually do with this is we can press the B key. And what that did was that is masking this area right here of the calf, of the lower leg, I should say. So with that done, that whatever's in that mask, that blackish area there, is protected. So now we're going to press F. We're going to pull here, and this area here generally isn't affected. So now we're going to hold Alt, press M to take that mask off of that area. So let's do it to the other side. We're going to press B, and this is going to select this area here so we can work without being concerned about pulling that other side. So let's hold the middle mouse button to take a look. Click the green Y. I'm going to press F to shrink this down. Okay. So I'm going to hold Alt, press M to take away that mask. Okay, so let's go back to layout. I'm going to click here on the foot. I'm going to push this over some. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like this. Press S to scale on the Z axis like that. I'm going to hold the mouse button to take a look. Press S to scale on the X axis. I'm going to You'll see why I'm doing that. You're probably like, what in the world? Press S to scale on the Z axis like this. So I'm going to click to go to sculpting. I'm going to hold Shift. So holding Shift smooths that. I'm trying to get that kind of like triangular shape to this. I'm going to go to the right view by clicking the red X here. So we're in right orthographic. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Press F to make this bigger. And remember how we put the mask on this, right? One of the benefits of having things broken up into shapes is the fact that we can work with just this without affecting this. So I held the middle mouse button just because I wanted to be able to come here and smooth this out. I'm going to click the red X. I find that when you're working with a foot like this, it's useful to go to do what we're about to do now. I'm going to go to Layout. I'm going to hold Shift and then right click. When I held Shift and right clicked, I moved the 3D cursor to here. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to press A. This brings up our Add To menu. I'm going to go to Mesh. I'm going to go to Cube. And what I'm doing with this cube is I'm going to press S to scale. And I'm scaling the top of this cube so it's right in line with where the reference of the foot, the bottom of the foot, right? So now I'm looking at it from the side. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis like that. And the reason why I'm doing this is I find that having the foot really be flat helps a lot. So I'm going to click on this foot here. I'm going to go to Add Modifier. And that's that looks like the wrench modifier. I'm going to go to boolean, which we'll be using a lot later. But for now, I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to difference. So to do this, what you want to do is make sure you have the foot selected, right? The foot is the thing that is getting the modifier put on it. And it's also getting an operation difference on it. So after the foot is the one that has the modifier on it, boolean modifier, and it's set to difference, then you're going to click this eyedropper and then click the cube. And the reason why we're doing this is we want to take away everything that's intersecting with this cube here. So now we'll click apply. We'll click here, pull this to the side, and now we have this nice flatness to this leg right here. So then we don't need the cube anymore, so we'll press X to bring up our delete menu, and then we'll left click on delete to delete the cube. So now the cube is deleted, and that's good. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to front view. We're going to click on the green Y. Let's see how this looks from the side view. All right. Click the green Y again. Interesting. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan it down. I'm going to click right here. And what I want right here is, let's go to sculpting mode. Let's go to our right view, clicking the red circle X. So we have this right here. So let's grab that, push that in here. I'm holding the middle mouse button to take a look. I want this to come out here. So I'm actually going to go to our inflate brush, and I'm actually going to move to make this inflate here. Okay. Okay, so I'm looking at the head. Let's go back to layout. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan down. I'm going to hold Shift, press B, then draw a zoom box to zoom in on the head. With the head clicked on, I'm going to press S to scale the head up. I'm going to click the red X to go to the side. I'm going to hold Shift, press D, then right click to get that to stay in place. I'm moving this forward, pushing this down, bringing it back to right here. Right there, there's what we want. And we're just going to get a basic shape of the face from this. Pushing this forward, so I'm going to press S to scale that up some. Okay, I'm going to left click on this bottom UV sphere. If you're wondering why I have a UV sphere for the bottom of the face, the UV sphere isn't so much for the side view, it's for the front view. The front view, I find this gives a nice circular shape to the bottom of the jaw, which I find looks nice, particularly for a female face. Remember also, I'm about to right click, and when I right click, we're going to select Shade Smooth. In Blender 2.8, when you right click, your right click is context sensitive. So I'm going to right click and select Shade Smooth. I'm going to left click here, then right click, then select Shade Smooth. However, if you right click on something and you don't see the same option, just remember your right click will change depending on what you are working with in Blender 2.8, which I actually think is pretty cool. Okay, we're going to the Sculpting tab. First thing you want to do, because we're doing for center objects, is remember to go to Symmetry Lock, click X to turn your symmetry back on so that your center object looks right. It's very easy to forget to turn this back on when you're doing with a center object. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to click the red X circle. I'm going to go to our grab brush. I'm going to press F to make my brush bigger than the UV sphere. I'm pulling this back like that. And this is how we want the side of the face to look. Okay, so let's click the green. What we want to do here is the line right where the eyes would be. Let's go to a front orthographic view. See this right here? What we want to do is I'm going to go to the flatten brush. I'm not planning on using the flatten brush. I'm just putting it there, and you might say, why are you doing that? Because I want to smooth. So I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm smoothing to try to get this line that you see here down to about center point of the eyes. Even though we're not going to be adding detail in like that, this is about what you want to do with the bottom of the face. Now we're going to go to the grab brush. I'm going to press F. Just pull that in to match up more with the reference image. Okay, we're going to click to go back to layout. We're going to click on this top head portion. If you're wondering why I keep coming back to layout, someone told me that I could go to the collection in Blender 2.79. You could go to the collection, click it, and you could do that in sculpt mode, and you would select. Doesn't seem to be working for me when I do it here, so just it's not too difficult to come here and just select this and then go back. So anyway, I have this selected, so I'm going to go back to sculpting mode. I'm going to go to my flatten brush, hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to go to it right here. Remember when we flattened that top, I'm holding shift and middle mouse button to pan. Remember we flattened the top part in the beginning of, we did that to like the hip area. We're pretty much doing the same thing here. Gonna go, now I'm okay. Clicking the green Y. I'm going to press F, shrink this down, and this area right around the eyes here. Just going to take this across like that. Now I'm just coming out to take a look. Now what I'm going to do is go to Layout. Then I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis. Like that. Okay, so here in Layout, I'm going to hold Shift and then right click to put the 3D cursor right here. I'm going to hold Shift and right click to move that lower to right there. I'm going to, with the 3D cursor right here, remember in Blender, objects tend to come into Blender where the 3D cursor is at. I'm going to hold Shift, press A. I'm then going to select Cube. And the cube came in right to where our 3D cursor was at. Okay, so why don't we bring in this cube? And we brought this in so that we could make an ear. So we're gonna, with the cube selected, we can tell it's selected because it's highlighted orange. We're gonna go to our upper left. We're gonna click on the arrow. We're gonna go to edit mode. We're then going to right click. Used to be W, now it's right click to subdivide. So we're gonna subdivide. If you've done some of my tutorials before, normally I would do a subdivide smooth. Now in Blender 2.8 to do similar things where we want to smooth out a cube, you just subdivide it. You look to this lower left-hand corner. We see this subdivide popped up here, little menu thing. We're going to click on the triangle. And now how do we get that subdivision smooth? See the smoothness? We're just going to grab this and take this all the way up to 1. That gives us our smoothness that we normally would have had before with the subdivide smooth. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis like this. I'm going to click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to left click here. Here is near the upper left hand corner. Then I'm going to left click on object mode to go back to object mode. Okay, before I did a subdivision surface, I went to the modifier panel here. We could do the same thing. Again, this time we're going to do it the fast way. I'm going to hold control. While holding control, I'm going to press 2. That automatically put a subdivision surface modifier of 2 on here. And then what I'm going to do is with this selected, I'm going to right click and select shade smooth. Okay, with that done, I'm going to take this, push this over into the position of an ear, shrink this down. Press R to rotate on the Z axis. That's the scale. Should be good there. We'll click on the nothingness now. Okay. I'm looking at right here. Okay, so we didn't work on this yet. Okay. Okay, we're going to click on this upper arm. We're going to click on our green circle there. Let's shape this arm. So we're going to go to our sculpting tab, roll the mouse wheel to zoom back, hold shift and middle mouse button to pan, click on our green circle. Again, if you're like, why did it jump? Why did it change? Remember, this is different here. This changes things here. If we wanted to keep it the same, we could click here And this would also take us around. I like how Blender 2.8 is set up as far as changing the color and setting things up to look nice for us. So I like that. So anyway, now that we're here and we have this selected, we want to go to our symmetry lock, turn this back off. We're going to go to our grab brush. We're going to press F to make our brush bigger. We have a box mask there. It used to be Control Shift right. Oh, I guess it is Control Shift right. Select to draw a mask. And it's maybe it wasn't that. It wasn't that. Here's our mask brush. So we can click this box mask here to mask instead of pressing B. So I have too much. I want to push this in. See, I grabbed too much there. So I'm going to hold Alt, press M. Let's try this again. There we go. All right, so I'm going to shrink the brush, and I'm just trying to line this up. The mask helps. So now we can hold Shift, smooth that down some. We'll hold Alt, press M to take the mask away. Okay, so let's go to Layout, select the lower arm, go back to the Sculpting tab. And the person who commented and said they had told me about the there was a comment telling me about the selecting for sculpting, I believe from the collections. For some reason, when currently Blender, maybe I'm not doing it the right way. When I try to select in here, I did it practicing for this tutorial. I could not select the shapes from the selection zone. Anyway, with this here, let's go to our box select. So remember it's box mask select. I'm sorry, I don't want to confuse you. So we're protecting this, and we're doing that so that we can grab this area right here. So I'm going to press F, shrink this down. So I'm just trying to pull these shapes here. So now we'll hold Alt, press M, that takes away the mask. Then we'll click here. You could just click B as well. So now that we have this masked and protected, we'll go to our grab brush, and we'll just have to make that bigger. We'll push that over, hold the middle mouse button, take a look. Let's go to our red X, see how this looks like on the side. There we go. Shift to smooth that out. Okay. So let's go back to our front view. Let's add in some UV spheres. I can see this isn't matching the reference. Let's go to Layout, push that ear down and over some. This 3D cursor, where we put the 3D cursor at, we're going to, this is where objects tend to come in at. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold Shift, press A. This brings up our Add To menu. We're going to select UV sphere. And what we're going to do is use this UV sphere to put this in multiple spots. So we're going to hold Shift, press D, duplicate that, right click to get this thing in place. We're going to bring this down, push this to where the shoulder is at here. We'll click the green Y to go back to front view. click here, hold shift, press D, right click to get this to stay in place. Push this here, hold the middle mouse button, rotate so we can see. We'll push this up here. Click the Y. To go back to there. And we'll adjust these more later. We'll click here, hold shift, press D, right click. Push that up like that. Go back to front view. Click here, holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to holding shift now. I'm holding shift. I'm going to press D, right click, bring this down, push this over. Not sure if I want this here or not. We'll click here, hold shift, press D, right click. We'll go to our side here. We'll push this down. Bring this up like this. We'll press S to scale on the Y axis like that. Push this over. S to scale on the X axis. Okay. Click here. Let's press S to scale on the, wait a second, S to scale on the Y axis, like this. For our hand, hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. So let's click here. I rolled the mouse wheel to zoom back. We'll hold shift, press D, right click, push this down. Push this over, zoom in, press S to scale. Now we're going to hold shift, press D, right click. Just like that. We'll hold shift, press D. Again, manipulator's getting in the way, so we'll click here. To take it away, I'll hold shift. Now I have that selected as well. I'm going to go back to the manipulator. I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click, push this down like this. I'm going to hold control and pull this to the side. Now the reason why I'm doing this is I'm making sure that I didn't duplicate this twice, and I didn't. When I held control, when I let go of control now I'm holding control again, I can make this jump, this being this shape, to right where I took it from. Okay, so with this here, we'll hold shift. I held shift to select both of these. And now with both of these selected, I'm going to hold shift and press D, right click, pull to the side, hold shift, press D, right click, pull to the side, hold shift, press D, right click, pull to the side. I'm going to select all of these. Press S to scale down. Bring these forward. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view just so I can see what's going on. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like this. Click here. So I'm moving this over, then I'll push this down. So it's basically going into a thumb position like that. And then now I'm going to press R2. I want to go to, I right click to deselect the turn. I'm going to go to the red X. And the reason why is we're in the right orthographic, so we can just press R to rotate without being concerned about an axis. So I'm pressing R to rotate. Click here, hold shift, so I select both pieces. If you're wondering why I only have 2 digits when a hand basically has 3, the way that I learned this method of, I'm just moving these. The way that I learned this method of boxing things in was from an artist named Shane Olson. And I liked how he planned things out this way. And one of the things that he did, along with showing me most of this method here, was for his hands, he uses 2 digits instead of 3. And he said it worked out for him. And hands tend to be generally complicated. And this uncomplicates things a little. So that's, if you're wondering why, that's why. Okay, so let's go to Y, front. Okay. Okay, I'm going to click on this X-ray so I can grab this of this hand part here. All of the different pieces of the hand. That's why I went to X-ray. If we didn't go to X-ray, we might just grab just the front of what we see here, as well as some of the front fingers rather than all of them. So now like this, we can adjust the hand. Okay, so I'm going to click to go back to solid view. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I'm going to click the green Y to go back to front view. I click here. It's actually where it should be. From the front anyway. So I'm going to press G and then Y to move that forward, just so it cleared the rest of our torso. I'm going to click to go to the right orthographic view now. And now with this selected, I'm going to click on the Sculpting tab. I'm going to click the red X over here. Okay, let's go to the grab brush. We're on the grab brush. So let's make sure this is off. It's off. So we're going to just basically pull this like that. You can actually pull this so it goes like that somewhat. Let's go to the front view. And with this, we want to make sure that this doesn't, yeah, this is good, that it doesn't cross over. Anyway, as far as like right here. So we can hold shift, smooth that out. Click the Y to go back to the front view. There we go. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go back to the front view, go back to layout, we'll click here, we'll go to add modifier, we'll then select mirror for mirror modifier, and then for this mirror modifier what we want to do is we want to look to where we see mirror object. We're going to click here. We're looking for that E for mirrors. We're going to left click there, and what that does is that mirrors here, mirrors off of this empty right there. Okay, what we want to do, let's first select this hand. So we're going to go to this X-ray mode. We're selecting this so that we can select all of the fingers. So we're going to click on this select box. We're going to left click and drag a box right here. Now we're going to hold, well, let's go back and let go of shift. Let's go to solid view. I'm going to hold shift, select the ear, everything but that shoulder that has a mirror modifier on it that we want mirrored. So now I'm still holding shift, and then we select this shoulder last. I'm letting go of shift. Now we're going to hold control, press L. This menu pops up and we want to select modifiers. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back. And what happened was we told all of these objects to take the modifier that was on this, and since this modifier was set to the empty, these objects had a mirror modifier put on them, selected to the empty as well. And now we can adjust things. Let's shrink that down. We'll click to bring our move tool back. Click here. We really don't want these touching. So we're going to click here. We're going to go to our sculpting tab. We're going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. And that's interesting. Sometimes you'll see things like this, like it should be there, it being, yeah, this is there, but it's just not showing in sculpting. So you just want to act like it is showing. So we're going to go to our grab brush. And what we want to do is just adjust this some. And I'm pulling this to the side because this shouldn't be sticking out. Yeah, let's go back to layout. Let's click here. Okay, so let's go to sculpting mode, and we're selected on this. Let's hold shift. We're smoothing this out to basically push that in. I just clicked a few times right there. You're going to be careful with how you're doing that. I'm just taking a look now. Holding, no, that's right, we're not on that. Go back to layout, we'll click here. So we'll go to sculpting. We should be able to shrink our brush, hold shift and push this in like that. going to go back to layout, click here, back to sculpting. Now back to layout. So I'm going to hold them the mouse button. Let's select here. Let's go back to sculpting. We'll take our grab brush. Push that in some. Smooth this some. Press the F. Go to the inflate brush. Go to the grab brush. I want to be very careful about having this overlap. Let's go back to layout. And what's nice is we can actually push this like this. Back to sculpting. Use inflate. Back to layout. So we just really don't want that touching there. Okay, and if you're wondering why I'm saying we don't want this touching, is because of the boolean. When we go to join these shapes together, sometimes there's issues. I'm going to right click and select shade smooth. Go back to sculpting. Inflate brush. Let's come back to layout. Press. That's the scale. Back to sculpting. Grab brush. Just pulling this out. Sorry for my lack of talking. Sculpting. Just trying to get that close without having those two pieces touch. Okay. Okay, I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to sculpting. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and rotate. I'm going to remember to turn back on the symmetry because we're dealing with a center object. So we want to make sure that we have this even. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to go to layout, click here. Go back to sculpting, hold shift here, press F to shrink my brush. Okay. I'm going to go to layout. I'm going to click on the shoulder. I'm going to go back to sculpting. Shoulders are actually flat on the top. I'm going to go to the flatten brush for the most part. And flatten out that top. I'm then going to go to our symmetry lock, turn this off. And go to the grab brush. Pull that down like that. Hold Shift to smooth that out. Holding Shift. Remember, Shift automatically activates the smooth tool. I'm going to go to inflate to just make that come up some. Holding Shift again. I'm going to click here to go back to layout. I'm going to click here. I'm going to hold Shift, press D, then right click. I'm going to push this down, pull this to the side. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like this. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis, -90. Move this over here like this. I'm going to press S to scale. And what I'm trying to do is put in a clavicle bone. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis like this. Now I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis twice. I'm going to press S to scale. What we want is this to come right over to the pressing S to scale, by the way. Oop, push back. Thought I was going up. We can press S to scale on the Y axis. Oh, no, we can't. Wait a second. S to scale on the X axis? Nah. S to scale on the Y axis. Okay, didn't work. Just press S to scale. What we're going to do is hold Shift, click on the shoulder here, zoom in. Then we're going to hold Control, press L, and our Make Links menu pops up. We're going to select Modifiers. So now we get a modifier to go to that other side. So now we'll click just on our clavicle bone. Try that again. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to click here. I'm going to press X to delete that UV sphere. I'm going to click here, press X to delete that. And now we will have our moment of truth. So we're going to click on our head. We're going to add a boolean modifier. To the head. And then we're going to change this from intersect to union. Okay, so now that we have this set up, what we want to do is select copy. So we're going to press this. We need this for all the different body parts. Let's try this another 10 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Not sure exactly how many we need. So hopefully, basically, we want to join all of these pieces together. If you're like, why do you have to join these pieces together by the Boolean process? The reason is that when the pieces intersect, we don't want the pieces that intersect to be still intersecting. We want the connection between here and here. We don't want there to be anything that is inside of the mesh. And that is for when we sculpt. So what we need to do now is we're going to click, I click copy again. What the heck? So let's do it another 3, 4. I guess that would be 4, 5 times. So now we'll click here. We'll click on the face. And the reason why copy is advantageous compared to just doing this is because little things save time. Like this is already set for union. So now we just need to go through and select the body parts. Now, hopefully this will go well. We're kind of going from top to bottom. Shift and middle mouse button to pan.